So we are back this week with an all-new Deep Cuts Live. I'm your host, Antoine Reid, and today we have with us Juan Lugo from Don Doroteo. And we had this whole discussion just a few minutes ago about how to pronounce it. So thank you for informing me because I wanted to make sure we get it right. So thank you for coming
Yeah, for
on.
sure, brother. Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, we met very, very, very briefly at PCA. Um,
Mhm.
and it's been it feels like
Couple
forever
months.
now since since
Yeah.
that show happened. So, um, how has life been basically since PCA? Like, how has business picked up? Are people kind of looking for? I know we're going to talk about the new release, but have people been
Mhm.
asking you about that new release since the show?
Yeah, it's been good, man. It's kind of funny because, at least from my experience, leading up to PCA, it's always all hands on deck. I'd say about 12 weeks out, we hit like some crazy strides. We start, really getting everything worked up, everything from the presentation of the show, marketing, the actual product, making sure everything is dialed in. And then after the show, you kind of have this like moment of like, all right, I could breathe. And then you get back to it, ready for the next one. So yeah, man, it's been great, dude. Just plugging away on all kinds of things. We're pretty much I'm really happy that the trajectory that we're taking so far, we're really kind of setting the pace for setting ourselves apart from the typical just cigar company.
Hmm.
Just working on all kinds of different verticals for the brand outside of cigars. So, one thing, I'll jump right into it, that we've been working on is kind of the same way we bring culture to the show. So I've been really adamant about and intentional about displays, about you remember the booth we had and we had like actual live plants with the
Hmm.
smoke coming up. It was kind of like giving the vibe of what we see when we're here at this farm, 6 in the morning during the harvest week or something. Like that's exactly what you see. It's pretty dope to feel that and see that in person, firsthand. So one thing I've been thinking about for about a year and a half is like, how do I want to get to a point where I could bring folks to the farm and host them and kind of bring them the whole vibe, man. Just not just the cigars and some cool display at a booth or something. Bring them in there and then they get to meet the family, Doroteo's family, essentially my aunts and uncles who actually grew up, on the tobacco field just like this one behind me here and helped my grandfather Doroteo a lot. He had like 12 kids, so he had essentially like an assembly line. Child labor laws, right? uh, so my mom would tell me, she would help him, roll up the andullo tobacco, which is in our two of our blends now. So now this year we're actually going to kick off in December. We're going to start doing tours in the Dominican Republic. So we're really excited about that. I've done so much work on the farm itself to pretty much bring what I like to call the Napa Valley vibe. I lived a couple years in the Bay Area in California with my wife, and she used to like to go wine tasting. I used to tag along, and I loved the kind of the immersion, like just immersing yourself into that culture and with any given brand, you would just go to their winery and it's kind of so cool. Like you're drinking wine and you see the grapevines and they're pairing it with very specific intentional tapas that pair well with the drink. And I just thought it was so cool. And then, fast forward to now, we're going to start doing that in December. So we'll have live music at every event. It's going to be the typical Dominican live music. We're going to have the equivalent of like for folks that don't know what pernil is, like Kahlua pork cooked right on the farm. It's our traditional pork that is called pernil. We'll pair that with Don Doroteo Cigar and a Dominican rum. So, and obviously we'll get the more intimate version of what you see in Vegas. It'll be more long-winded. It'll be a whole evening of just fun. So, yeah.
Wow. So I think that's really cool because I think with most cigar companies, it's really hard to stand out today because there's so many different companies. And press releases all start sounding the same after a while. Everybody has the best tobacco, Everyone's
Right.
using the best process. It's the best. You need to get it. And this is the best product you've ever released until your next product, which is the best product you ever released. So I think
Right.
the only way to really put yourself apart from others, I don't want to call them competition, but other companies making the same product, is to offer people an experience, because experiences are hard to replicate, are hard to make over. And I just think of some of those different tobacco companies, cigar companies mainly, that I visited their factories, and each one is completely different. And the ones that I
Mhm.
visited, you feel a much more of a connection to that brand, that company, than you do somebody that you just like, you know, you just
100%.
you just
Mhm.
kind of you pop up online. So I think that's a very
Mhm.
good step in in trying to set yourself apart from everyone else out there.
Yeah, it's just for me, since day one, it's just about being authentic, 100%, like, and being intentional with every little thing. Like I said, and when you're doing a trade show and making sure you have all your props, going through the hassle of dealing with, customs just to fly in and undo your tobacco, just for the sake of show and tell. Going
Mhm.
through the hassles that we went through for that, in the show booth, the presentation on the cigars, the actual blends, and then now at the farm as well. Um, and not becoming just another iPhone release. They all seem to be the same these days. But yeah, man, like for me, I think one cool thing that we're doing to set us apart, because I know there are even a handful that do have their own, factories, and they have their own farms, just like we do. Very few do, but I know there's a handful of them out there. For me, it's about I'm not here to board anyone with the science. If you want that, that's great. We'll give it to you. But and that's all part of the experience when you come to the farm. But the main purpose is for us to host you and show you how we celebrate, how we live life. And that's a big, big part of our Dominican culture. Our culture is built on island time, just having a good time, and everything about our culture is about celebrating life. And so I that's what I'm bringing to the farm. Celebrating life, and I want cigar aficionados to come and kind of have that Napa experience when you go drink wine at a winery, but instead you're smoking a fine cigar, well aged cigar, and you're doing it right, at the farm. You could touch the plants. You could, see the process, walk in the barn, the curing barn, and see all the different stages of the tobacco. Have live music and food and people. Like that. That's what it's about for me. So yeah, that's I guess our way of trying to just set ourselves apart. I guess not paying attention to what others are doing and just kind of do our own thing. And that's just one part of it. Like it's actually we created a junior venture. We haven't been promoting this at all yet, actually. So I don't know if my partners want me to talk about this, but we uh, we created a junior venture with a company out of Puerto Rico, which as you know, is our island, is our neighboring island, and it's a fly fishing group. So it's a bunch of expats that are essentially like investors. They moved to Puerto Rico, and they're like hanging up their hat, so to speak, right, on work. And they start fly fishing. They create a group, and then little by little, things just kind of serendipitously, work towards us creating a junior venture together. So now we have a partnership with them. And so the whole tour actually entails you going to the Dominican Republic, come to the farm, experiencing the factory piece, having that fine experience that I just explained a little while ago at the farm. And then the next day you fly over to Puerto Rico, and you go and you fly fish from a yacht, and you have, some world renowned fly fishermen kind of show you the ropes as you're fishing for exotic fish out there, smoking cigars, having a good time. So that's kind of the gist of the whole touring experience that we're going to bring.
Now, when you were talking about creating that experience or giving people the chance to experience, your culture and how you all kind of live life, do you find that people today, are they really interested in the process of making cigars, like, like the nitty gritty, or are they looking for the experience, like the vibe, the culture of your company? Like, are
I
they
think
looking
I
for
think there's
one?
a Yeah, I think there's definitely a group of folks that are very into like behind the scenes, like all the inner workings of blending and even at the farm, I'm sure, I've had folks visit in the past and they're like, well, what kind of, products are you using on the plants? And, have you checked the pH levels on the water? And have you, like, of course, there's going to be that. But then I think the vast majority of folks want an experience. Like that's what we all want. We just want to experience something amazing, something fun. So I did like a little trial run in March of this year. I invited out a good group of people. I was there already because I was going to finalize the Salts of the Earth blends for PCA this year,
Mhm.
which I just released. So I figured, hey, why not two birds, one stone? We go finalize the blends, but we also go and do a little beta test here, a little sandboxing, if you will. We do an event. We host an event at the farm, and we do it exactly as we're projecting to do it upon the release in December, and see how it goes. And it was amazing, man. And the feedback was great too. I invited some folks from the states that never have been to Dominican, have never experienced anything like that before, and it's really cool because, like, obviously for me, growing up in the culture, it's something that I don't take for granted, but I know that it's common, and it's just it's like a second home for me. So I don't think twice of it. But I know for folks coming from the states or from wherever in the world that have never been there, it could be a little, going to a third world country could be a little daunting for if you've never been and you don't know the language, you don't know the culture, the mannerisms, all that stuff, how to get around. There's no Ubers, how to get around, right? So but that said, it's all good. Like we take care of all that. So from the moment they land, they're greeted by my cousin Aaron Fernandez, who is the agricultural lead in Dominican Republic,
Mhm.
and he grew up here in the States. So he's an Air Force vet and everything, just like myself. So it's very comforting. You get picked up from him, and you're directly to your Airbnb, and then directly to the farm, and so that's kind of like the way I view it. Like just bring that whole experience, like the educational piece definitely, but more so from a historic standpoint.
Awesome. To backtrack a little bit, tell people a little bit about you. Like, how did you, get into the industry, and what were you kind of doing before you really got into the industry?
Right on. Yeah, I grew up with this in my family, tobacco. Like this is what my grandfather did. Both of my grand from both sides actually. So Doroteo is my maternal grandfather, but my paternal grandfather did the same thing. It's just that he didn't have the long lasting, legacy piece. Like he grew tobacco, but he also grew plantains. He also grew yucca. He also grew like all kinds of produce. But it's not like, hey, let me do it for the gram for a new reel. Back then, it was
Mhm.
for like, hey, I gotta feed my family. So this is what they did to feed their family. So growing up, it wasn't like how do you say? It wasn't like glorified or put on the pedestal. It's just like what they did. That's just what we did for survival in the Dominican. And my grandfather Doroteo, from my mom's side, he not only did he stick to it, he like he took it to the next level, man. Like he was, as you can imagine, in the early 30s, he was an orphan. So his father essentially died, and his mom was too old to work. So he was the oldest of six. So he took it upon himself at the age of 16 to start growing tobacco, and he went to La Aurora and he sold to them exclusively, and he did so. And that was his legacy for many, many decades. And so, fast forward to 2011, he passes away. At the time, I was about 20 years old or so, um, and I was in the military. I was in the Air Force. When I found out, I was on my way to Iraq, second tour, and devastated and everything. And but at the time, I felt like, man, those did the thought of doing this cross my mind? Yes, but like at the time, as any 20-year-old would feel, I felt like those shoes were too big to fill for me at the time, and I stand corrected. Even now, in hindsight, I was pretty pretty dumb back then in my 20s. I was running around as you would imagine, doing all kinds of dumb stuff. But at that age, I was serving and trying to kind of figure out what path I wanted to take. And then after the military, I was stationed in California, so I figured I'd stay there, go to college. Married my then girlfriend, and I worked in tech for a bit. So for a few years, I worked in different startups. I did everything from like cybersecurity to AI. I worked in blockchain, cryptocurrencies. I did all kinds of stuff, man, for many years. And honestly, like, it just during the pandemic, I think that was when it really hit me. Like 2020, I was sitting on my deck with my brother. And we were smoking cigars. We are talking about my grandfather Doroteo, and at the time everyone's stuck in their house. I was like, man, it would
Hmm.
be awesome to go to Dominican and travel. Man, I miss going to the island, seeing the family and whatnot. And then the idea just came back to my head, and I was like, man, it'd be great if I could just take on that legacy. Because when he passed away, no one in the family wanted to take it on. Like a lot of people wonder, like, well, why wouldn't they want to? A lot of folks have asked me that, and it's like you gotta understand the mindset. Like, you migrate to this country, to the U.S., and then you have kids and you raise them here. How can you expect first generation Americans who have been brought up their whole life, like you have to go to college and you got a good career, yada yada, and have everything they know and love is here, like their friends, everything. And then you tell them, hey, we're gonna go back to Dominican. Now we're gonna go back to farming, just like our grandfather did. They're gonna. This is exactly what I asked some of my cousins if they wanted to do it with me. Go on a joint venture, and they were like, yeah, I don't know, man. So I kind of just I whipped up a business plan and I put it in my back pocket, and I just kind of let it sit there until the time was right. And fast forward 1 year, I was in Puerto Rico, San Juan, Puerto Rico, with some buddies of mine that I've met through the tech industry, and one of them pulls out his personal little case, and he had very very exclusive vintage cigars, and I thought it was really interesting because obviously I come from that culture. I smoke cigars, but I never mentioned it. I never talked about it with them because most of the work we did was virtual. So we were on Zoom a lot, all different kinds of platforms and stuff. But very rarely did we ever get to sit and break bread together, as I say. So, anyways, he passes cigars around to the whole group. Out of the whole group, I'm the only one that knows how to cut it, light it, do the whole thing. And we get to talking a little bit. And he's like, "Hey, you're Dominican, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "You ever thought about like, you have any ties to the industry, or ever thought about like going into the cigar industry?" And I was like, "Actually." So I told him the story about my grandfather and some of the plans that I've put on paper and stuff. And from that, the rest is history, man. From that moment forward, the whole trip he was telling me, it was my partner Brandon, who is a co-founder of Doroteo. He's from Nebraska, and he had been, of an aficionado for many decades. And he's just waited for the right time, and thankfully, that was with me. So
Wow, so it's like you decided to get into it when you were ready, which is probably a good thing
yep,
because I think some
yep,
people sometimes, they want to leap into something really quickly and it doesn't turn out like they want, and they get very upset that they aren't having success, or they aren't getting into enough stores, or whatever it is that
right.
they're trying to do. So you kind of, like I said, I think it's great to highlight the fact that you did wait until you were really ready to do it. And even though there were people around you who weren't ready to do it, you were ready, and that kind of seemed to
Yeah.
motivate and attract the help and the support that you needed.
Yeah, so yeah, two things. Yeah, definitely waited for the right time, and but initially, the reason I had so much conviction with this project is because I had done the other route, like the plan B of like, hey, let me fall back on my degree, and I was living in Silicon Valley. I had a set made up, bro. Like, graduate college and immediately had a great career going, and making good salary and all this stuff, all the stupid perks. And it's just like it felt empty, man. It just felt like I just kind of was having a little foresight, a little "that's so Raven" moment. And I was like, dude, what am I going to be doing when I'm 45, 50? Like, I'm still going to be sitting, on my computer, just, plugging away all day long. Like, I can't do that. So, and it's funny because, the more I kind of, as a first generation American, and I think this will resonate with any immigrant family or from wherever you migrate from, but you tend to want to assimilate, to the American culture, rightfully so, right? Like, this is your home, and I did so to the point where I served. in the military. I did all that. So I'm very patriotic, very proud of being a citizen here. But at the same time, like, Dominican Republic was always in the back of my mind.
Hmm.
And my cousin, who's running the farm in Dominican, he actually went to the Air Force with me at the same time. So we went into the buddy system. And it's funny because I remember even back then, even though we were, young and dumb, 19 years old, we were telling each other like, "Hey, dude, when we get out the military, let's go to college and then let's start a business in the Dominican Republic." And we're like, "Hey, that's a great idea. What should we do? Let's do like a hookah bar or a club or all this dumb stuff." And it's like we're almost like running away from our legacy, from who we are, and I think that's the two things, like immigrant mindset a little bit, and also kind of just being young and dumb. You trying to do some cool stuff, and the more we pushed away from it, like it just hit us right in the face. So, um, he was the first person I called when my partner in Puerto Rico told me, "Hey man, I'm serious. I want to do this with you." The first person I called immediately was my cousin, the same one, Aaron, and I said, "Yo, it was very, very, you know, like serendipitous that during that time, and mind you, it was still the pandemic. Aaron was living in Pennsylvania, and he left. He went to the Dominican Republic because he was sick of the rules and the mask and mandates and all this stuff. He's like, "Screw this, dude! I'm going to our country. We could just chill over there. There's no COVID doesn't exist over there." So he just went over there. He was living life, dude. I will call this guy. He's at the club. He's at the pool hall. He's just smoking cigars, having a good time, drinking. And so when I call him, I'm like, "Hey, dude, you fixing to come back yet or what?" So I started off with that. I want to kind of gauge where he was at. And he's like, "Nah, man, I'm really loving it here. I think I'm going to be staying here for a while." And I'm like, "Okay, well, I got this project in mind." And then I kind of laid it on him, like, "Hey, remember back then, 10 years ago, we talked about doing this and that." So I proposed him leading the farm for me, so I could run operations here in the states. And we ran with it, dude, and it's been amazing since.
I love that you found something that resonated with you rather than, like you said, just chasing some other idea. Because I think so many people want to be entrepreneurs, but they want to chase after something that is just making money or they see other people doing. But you did something that probably some people like heard that you want to do like your own cigar brand was like, really? Like that's what you want to do? And but you did it and you were connected to this idea. And like you said, it kind of went back to your heritage and your family. So I think that's
Hmm.
what made it probably a lot easier for you than if it was just someone else out there just trying to make this idea happen just to make money.
Yeah, it's just being authentic. That's what it comes back to. Like you could chase lucrative ideas, and it's not to say there's anything wrong with that. That's great. I mean, we were able to launch this company because we did that initially. Like we set after lucrative opportunities in the tech industry, and some of that went well, and that led to us being able to really double down on what we actually wanted to do,
Hmm.
which is this. So I'm just fortunate, that to be able to do this, like to be able to, and for me, it's just a blessing, man, to be able to take on my grandfather's legacy and honor him and my family and our history and our culture. That's what it's about for me, man. I have three kids, young family. I have a 5-year-old daughter and twins, and for me, I see how over multiple generations being in the United States, you lose that identity, that cultural identity, and I don't want my kids to lose that. So one of the primary reasons why I did this was because I wanted to make sure that I stay connected to my culture, but more importantly, my kids do too. So when I'm long gone, they still feel this island in their heart. So um, my dad lives 3 minutes away from the farm, walking distance. So that's another way, like, for me to stay connected because obviously they live on the island. I have a young family in the States, so I don't get to frequent as much. But when I do, guess what? Even if it's a business trip, I'm right by my dad's house. So everything is intentional, everything's by design. And so yeah, man.
So when you finally got this idea, you knew that who you wanted to work with, you knew what you wanted to do. Um, how did you actually start this company. And I say that because so many people, again, especially if they're cigar smokers, they go, "Ooh, it'd be cool to have my own cigar brand," and they don't know
Hmm.
all the different steps and processes and things you need to get done in order just to get to the point where you can make a cigar. So,
Absolutely,
what
absolutely.
was that process like? Creating, like going from I want to do this into actually like being able to get to the point where you can say, okay, now I can actually make a cigar and sell
Right.
it legally.
So I started with, you know, the this is the most millennial Gen Z answer ever. I started with the most, you know, traditional thing. I went to Google, uh, and I started with simple questions. You know, and this dates back to 2020 when I started doing that business plan. So I started. The first thing was putting it on paper. You know, just put your thoughts on paper. What is it you're set to? It doesn't matter what it is, cigar company, whatever. Put it on paper. What is it that you actually want to accomplish? Do you even know what you want to do? Once you figure that out, put it on paper. You know, you want to accomplish X, Y, Z, and then try to figure out everything there is to know about that thing. Everything you may not know. Find out all the unknowns because there definitely are a lot of them, a lot more than you think. Regardless of what industry you're tapping into. So I knew going into this, and I grew up in New York City, man. Like I'm not a farmer. I'm a city boy first, and you know I am first generation American. So for me, it was learning from the ground up, literally. So it was, you know, like putting everything on paper, all the questions from like, okay, um, if we're gonna actually follow through on this, we're gonna reignite my grandfather's legacy. What is his legacy? It's growing tobacco. It's not cigars. My grandfather rolled cigars for himself, personal use, and he used to sell to locals in his little farmers market. So he had a little farmers market next to his house, and he would sell all kinds of goods, you know, produce, dairy products that he would all, you know, harvest himself, and then cigars, box press cigars that he would actually roll himself. But he didn't put bands on them. He didn't market them. It was just like, I have cigars. If you want to buy them, you want to buy them. You know. So for me, it was about, okay, we're gonna first and foremost, before we even talk about branding and selling cigars, we're gonna have a farm and we're gonna reignite the partnership that way. So I got all my facts right, and then I went straight to La Aurora. Well, when I say I went straight, I called them. I called them, and they were like, "Hey," I was talking to like a salesperson, and they were like, "Can I help you?" And I was like, "Yeah, I need to speak to who's in charge." And little by little, you know, I was digging, and then they gave me they transferred me to the master blender. I told the master blender what I want to do. I told them who my grandfather was, all this stuff, because this predates, you know, even their work. You know, this is
Mhm.
since 1936. So they vetted all the information I gave them. They fact checked everything. They came back to me a couple days later. They're like, "Hey, everything checks out, man. So what's on your head? What do you want to do?" And I tell them like, "I want to reignite the partnership my grandfather had until he passed. I want to grow, harvest, and sell tobacco to you exclusively. And the second part to that is I want to take it a step further. I want to actually have a cigar commemorating my grandfather." And so they were like, "Okay, cool, man, let's go." And honestly, man, like I obviously had a lot of, you know, gaping black holes I had to figure out, but they were really really super cool about, you know, taking me under the wing and helping me out, not only on the cigar side with blending, with you know, the whole process there, but also on the agricultural, man. Because that's the funny thing, a lot of the folks that sell cigars nowadays don't even touch this. They don't know what this is. This process right here, it could be hell, dude, if you don't know what you're doing. And honestly, man, they really helped us out. Like initially, they when my co-founder and I were fixing to purchase this land. This land actually belonged to my family for many many generations. My dad's side, my other side of the family, but it was not used for tobacco. It was used for just regular produce. You know, plantains, which grows abundantly in the Dominican Republic, mangoes, limes, yucca, you name it. And you know what they used to do with that? They used to just gift it to the neighbors. You know, it used to be like I don't know what you refer to, but like a neighbor's garden, or if you will. They would just go and pick produce for their family, and it was kind of like something that my other grandfather Ramon used to do for the community. And so when we were fixing to buy the land, we were like, okay, what are the checkpoints we need? You know, first and foremost, is there a natural water source? So we had to bring out some folks to test the soil and start, digging up, to see if they could find some water. It was a pain in the butt, and we came this close to not doing it just because in this particular parcel because um, we couldn't find water. And then finally, in the last try, they found the water. Great. Okay, next step, pH levels. Like, we had to go higher, some green thumbs so they could come in and do an analysis of the soil. They could tell us exactly like, hey, if you're trying to grow tobacco, these are the types of strains of tobacco we recommend you grow. Here in the Dominican Republic, because it's such a huge part of the GDP, just a big part of the culture, the government actually has officials that you could lean on. So you can actually get government help. They come and they'll send an agronomist, and they'll help you do everything from getting the analysis on your soil all the way to getting seeds. They'll connect you to greenhouses. They'll help you find a local employment, like any field workers that you may need. That's how I was able to build my team essentially in the Dominican Republic. And it took some trial and error, man. It was not easy, but we fortunately now in hindsight we have a very robust team there that is very knowledgeable. So yeah, man, Google. Short answer.
So when it came time to actually start blending and making cigars with, within your brand, what did you set out to create? And I say that because people sometimes want to make cigars based on their palate or some people want to make cigars based on what, their grandfather or their father used to smoke, to kind of reminisce. Some
Right.
people blend based on strength. So what were you creating a cigar for? Like, who were you creating a cigar for?
I was creating it for my grandfather. The first one, especially Legado, was very special to me because the Legado translates to the legacy. That is the kind of like what the foundation of everything we're building is on that stick. And it's very interesting because the master blender, he was a really really like the whole Aurora family has been really really awesome, but the master blender in particular, Manny, he's really been such like a big brother to me, very helpful, very empathetic to the fact that I'm a city boy, and just like taking me under his wing and giving me the school of hard knocks and like kind of bringing me up to speed on the whole process. And the Legado is special because and that cigar that blend was rolled in 2008. So dude, I was a senior in high school, when that was being rolled and put in the aging room. Little did I know that, 14 years later, I was going to own that. So the way we came down to that blend in particular was he sent because of my grandfather's legacy, he opened up the doors. He said, like, whatever's in my house, you can have. So we were like kids in the candy store, just trying cigars and this and that. So we have a little panel, right, in our team. So we have in our core team, we have Brandon, my co-founder, who is a well-seasoned smoker, so his palate, he knows his stuff. And then we have a little unicorn in the team, Jeff Moss, our creative director and partner. Jeff Moss, if you don't know, was the creative director for Alec Bradley for over 13 years, and he's been smoking cigars as long as I've been alive. So when I'm gonna smoke cigars, I get my A squad, my A team together. I assemble the team, and then I'm like, all right, we're gonna smoke together. We're gonna hotbox until we find the right one. And I remember like yesterday, dude, we were smoking Legado, the what became the Legado. But when we smoked it, I remember Jeff immediately said, "This is the one. This is the one." And sure enough, I tell Manny, "Hey, Manny, we're gonna go with this blend here. This is what we want to kick off with. This is what we want to commemorate my grandfather with, and call the El Legado, the legacy." And he's like, "Well, it's peculiar you chose the 14-year-old blend because he didn't tell us beforehand what was in the blends. He didn't tell
Mhm.
us the aging on them, any of that stuff. It was a blind test, so we were just kind of tasting them blind, um, not knowing anything, and so that's how we kicked it off. And thankfully, the reception on that, rightfully so, right? It's a 14-year-old, you know, masterful piece. Just got rated a couple months ago, 95. So and I expect that from a good a great cigar from that well aged. For me, it was more important. Um, from a selfish standpoint, was the salt of the earth. So legado, as I said, is near and dear to my heart. I commemorate to my grandfather's legacy, paying homage to him. But for me to really make my mark in this industry, it was about salt of the earth. Salt of the earth, we blended, we fine tuned and blended and finalized in March of this year. So in March of this year, when I was saying I was there and I was two birds one stone, we went to do the event and go to the factory. We finalized on Salt of the Earth, and that to me was like the real test because if anyone could go and buy a Masterful 14 cigar, not everyone could roll a cigar that holds its weight, holds its own. And so for me, I was, it was like kind of like a nervous little angst I had a little bit towards PCA because I'm like, "Fuck, I hope they love my cigar. I hope because you could be biased all day. You're in an echo chamber. I'm in a bubble with all my whole squad, and we're like,
Mhm.
oh, this is great. We love this cigar. They're gonna love it, and then you don't know until you put it out there in the market. So we're at PCA, and we're like watching people smoke, and they're smoking. They're like, holy cow, dude, this is like okay. And some folks actually told us like straight up, and I actually appreciate them being so blunt. They said that we didn't know if you were going to be a one hit wonder because you don't come around so all a whole lot of 14-year-old amazing cigars. So like once that's done, what are you going to do after? That was the question. PCA of 22, that was the question. The whole show it was like, well, what are you going to do after? What are you going to do after? Well, salt of the earth. And yeah, like I said, man, the reception has been great. And yeah, this week actually we started um, shipping out the salt of the earth. So pretty excited about that. A few folks have them already at their
Yeah,
shops.
and look, if you give me a second, we'll give people a little bit of a visual. So this is
Hmm.
Salt of the Earth. Like you said, it was introduced at PCA this past year. So
Yep.
very excited. By the time this episode airs, it will be, I think, shipping to retailers. So um,
Yep.
kind of a
So yeah, we
like
started we
yeah.
started a couple days ago. Actually, I mean, there were some retailers, dude. That's the amazing thing, man. Like the reception on Salt of the Earth was so rewarding for me at PCA. There were folks that were like I don't care if you don't have the boxes yet. Like just send me bundles. I want the cigars. I was like, heck yeah, dude, that's awesome. So we actually shipped a bunch of bundles to a handful of retailers across the nation that didn't want to wait for the boxes. Going back to your whole thing about like the unknowns and how do you like kind of figure out, all the little points, dude, like boxes, getting boxes made is such a pain in the butt. Unless
Yeah,
you have that vertical integration and you actually have your own box factory, which, not so many people have. Um, it's a pain in the butt, man. So I've been, it's a learning process. I consider this a startup just the same as when I was in tech. It's just this is passion driven and it's an actual product that I love. So, but it's the process is no different, man. The queues on and wait times on different parts of the process, all different things you have to kind of weigh in so that you don't create any bottlenecks. So that's trial and error there.
yeah, and I always wonder with how hard it is to produce boxes because for those of you who don't smoke cigars regularly or buy a box, I mean these are like wooden boxes, so they're not like cardboard that you can just put in a hole.
Yeah,
It gets printed really quickly and ships out to you. It's not like that. Like these are like wooden boxes. So I always wonder why there's not like more of like a recycling program where manufacturers maybe offer retailers a like slight discount on an order, uh, and just refill that box rather than you having to continue to produce a box or something like that, or even give the
yeah,
consumer a chance to return that box or recycle that box in some way. Because if you buy lots of boxes, you end up going like, "What do I do with this box now?" And I know I saw somebody today saying like, "Oh, you just create a bonfire." I'm like, with how much work goes into like producing these boxes, it just seems like a big
yeah. It's insane,
waste. That
dude.
you're just like, "Oh, I'm just gonna like create a bonfire now." I'm like, we should be like having a better use of boxes like this because if you look at the screen and look at the design, I mean, a lot goes into creating this box. So
Yeah, so a little bit on that. It was just kind of funny now in hindsight. I get to joke about it now. Not so funny when we first, had this issue, but now it's funny. I hope you can see here. So I have the old uh, Legado box. So this was our old Legado box here. It looked like a Willy Wonka box full of chocolates, and that was such an eyesore for me, dude. I was like, I need to find something more legit. That is not gonna work. Because it's an amazing stick. It's high rated. It's at a higher price point. I want the end consumer to have that experience through and through, not just when they're smoking it. So I couldn't justify, presenting them in that box. And so like, going from that to what we have now, it's beautiful. It's more clean and it fits the bill. But it takes a lot more work to get it done. And the queue on these unfortunately are a lot longer. So that's the unfortunate piece, but it is what it is. This is part of the learning process with any business. So for me, the one thing from like if you want to get boring here, from a operational or logistical standpoint, one of the things I'm working on is just efficiency across the board. And the only way I do that is, learning from these experiences after, every time we do a run, every time we do a release. Um, and now I'm learning like, okay, I gotta make sure I order the boxes for XYZ release this many months in advance. Because for me, the goal is to recreate that Amazon model. That's what I want to have. I don't want folks going to PCA, falling in love, and then they're just teased for like 2 months. Like, oh my god, I want to smoke that cigar. Like, sorry, buddy, you gotta wait. So for me, it's about the goal for 24 for PCA 24. We're gonna release a 15-year-old cigar. It's gonna be called El Alcalde, which translates to the mayor. It commemorates when my grandfather was mayor of this region here from 1969 to 1971. So that cigar, like we started the process well in advance because we wanted to make sure that we had things dialed in for PCA 24. So when folks order the box, I could tell them, not tongue in cheek, like, hey, you'll have it in 3 days, you'll have it in 2 days, whatever the case. So
And it probably helps since the PCA 24 trade show is moving up in the year rather than it being,
yeah,
in in July, so that you actually have something new. Um,
yeah.
I'm sure that made you have to adjust a
You
little
kidding
bit.
me, dude? It's stressful as heck, man. I'm like, come on, man. I love you guys, but killing me. And I get it, it's all business. I know what they're up to. But yeah, man, it's just you just gotta roll with the punches. So like this time we didn't really have a break after PCA. I got straight to it because of that. Because I knew like, okay, we don't have as long as we think we do. So got to make sure we're ready to deliver. You can't just get caught up in the short and narrow.
Well, I think you're from what I've seen of Don Doroteo and what I've learned from speaking with you today is that your background in IT and in Silicon Valley and those startups really helps you kind of see the process of what it takes to, get a business going and keep it going and to grow it. Because I think a lot of people kind of get in and they think it's cigars, and cigars are all about taking your time and enjoying the
Have
moment.
fun,
The
relax.
business part of it is completely different, where it's just
Yeah,
like if you're not on it, you're going to get so far behind so quickly, and retailers don't have the time or the money or patience to kind of wait for you to get your stuff together. Like you
yeah.
will be replaced on their shelf,
Especially that
and
last one.
yeah.
The
so
patience. Yeah, yeah,
I think that that really makes Don Doroteo a really different type of company, because people can't really look at you, I think, and say you're a newbie, you're just learning the ropes. Like you seem to really have really fast track kind of your progress in a short amount of time, especially opening up this interview and talking about wanting to create that experience. I know companies in the premium cigar space, it took them like a couple of decades to get to the part where they're saying like, oh, let's give our customers an experience now. Like the cigars are there, let's worry about the experience.
right. Well, for me, yeah, yeah, I could see that. I mean, honestly, like the my background in tech definitely helps because one of the methodologies that apply here that I learned when I was in tech was just move quickly, make and be be efficient and make decisions quickly. It's just as simple as that. Just you're running uphill as fast as you can. And my partner and I we're both cut from the same cloth. Like we think the same. So on that
Mhm.
end, so he's more of like a visionary. So he's always like, you know, taking his time to kind of think about the long term big picture. And I'm more of like the work like a day to day, putting out fires, making sure things are getting done when they need to be done. And making sure the pony ride keeps going, and it's funny because like you're only able to do this kind of stuff, man, if you have an amazing team around surround you, so you're capable of doing this. So like I wouldn't be able to do this in by myself in 2 years. It's because of my team, man. Like when my partner again, he's the crazy visionary guy. I call him the Steve Jobs of the Don D team, and I'm the Wozniak. He'll straight up tell me like I remember after PCA of 22, we just debuted, not our cigar, our company, like just debuted. A couple months into that, right before Christmas, he tells me, "Hey, we should start doing tours next year." I'm like, "Bro, like, can we get like a core line going before we we start doing tours?" And I was like, "Oh man," but you know what? I appreciate it, and I thrive under that pressure. So I did the same thing, man. The minute he told me that same day, I took the rest. I allocated time for the rest of the year. For every week, I was going to sit down with my cousin, who was at the time just growing tobacco for us in the Dominican, and making sure that we had everything laid out for the harvest. And I said, "Hey, man, we're going to start doing tours, and you're going to lead them." So let's start thinking with that gear, and looking at the farm, not so much as just land that we utilize to harvest tobacco, but more so as an experience. Like a place where people go to experience Don D, not to produce Don D. If that makes sense. So the contract or agreement we have with La Aurora stands as it always does. We will grow, harvest, and sell exclusively to them, but we're going to utilize and leverage the farm itself as its own vertical, for tourism, just to add to that. I mean, it just does so much. Like aside from the fact that you get to have the amazing experience and all that, and like what better way than to build brand loyalty, than to bring some folks out and have them experience that intimate experience. But aside from that, like just for a feather in our cap, knowing that we're one of the few, manufacturers that actually own land where we grow tobacco, because a lot of folks just buy it from a factory. And secondly, that we're earning our keep. Like, again, it's just like this is a labor of love, man. Like, rolling cigars. Again, going back to your question earlier, if anyone is interested in having a cigar, just smoke it, dude. Unless you're prepared to really like grind it out, and that's really what you're passionate about. Like, I'm passionate about that. I'm like, I'm building this company up. Every day I wake up, I'm like, let's go. If you don't have that kind of passion for your cigar or whatever it is you want to do, I mean, it's just going to become an expensive hobby.
And I guess in order for you to have success in business, does it take a lot of work to balance the business part of your life with the personal life? Because you have kids, you have a
Yep.
wife. Does it ever become like a little bit of a tug of war of like where you put your time, or have you found some
Absolutely.
type of
Absolutely,
balance?
man. And this is cigars aside. This is entrepreneurship 101, dude. Any entrepreneur knows this. It's a holiday, it's a weekend, it's the evening. You know, if Master Blender calls me, my cousin calls me, my partner calls me, and there's a fire that needs to be put out, dude, I'm not, oh, sorry, it's the weekend. I don't work on weekends. Well, guess what? Crops don't care what day of the week it is, you know?
Right.
So, or, vice versa in the factory, it's just, especially the first few years, like the first few years, I'm very, I had the mindset like it's like having a baby, dude. And I've done that a couple times, so I know what that's like. Uh, the first few years, you're gonna feel like you're raising a toddler, an infant, whatever you want to call it. Which means there's no days off. But that's it. You have to love what you're doing, man. I love this stuff. So like, There's nothing in the world I would rather do than this. Nothing. So for me, it really isn't feel like work. It feels like I'm building, uh, something for my family and I'm honoring my legacy. That's what it feels like every day. So, for folks that are interested in making those cigars, I think along the way you also learn to really appreciate and respect the industry and the process and everyone that does it because man, when they say 200 hands touch it before you smoke it, it's like it doesn't even touch on like what that means, like all the work, all the time that goes into it. It's insane all the work that goes into producing those little sticks that are gone in 45 minutes to an hour.
Mhm.
It's crazy.
So at this point in the show, I usually like to wrap things up a little bit with two basic questions. The first of those questions is, do you have a philosophy that you live by?
Oh, that's interesting. um I mean, it depends how long-winded you want. I could be as efficient as one word, or I can ramble on as I've been doing for an hour. The short answer is, so I'm also an avid meathead. I work out almost every day. And I picked this up in the military. It just helps me. Um, I do it first thing in the morning after I drop my daughter off at school. I go straight work out, and it clears my head, and I have like a running list in my head every single day, my hit list as I call it, and it just gives me clarity and gets me like a meditative state where I can just really focus on what I need to do for the day. But anyways, point being is I have this something saved on my phone, my screensaver, and it was on my. I just moved. My previous house had a gym in my garage, and I had it on the wall. Conquer, just one word. And as cliche, whatever it may be, for what it means to me, So um, I see that, and that's what I live by. It doesn't matter what I'm doing, if it's parenting, being a husband, this business, venture, anything. It's just be the best. Just wake up. It's go time. So that's kind of like how I live, man. So that's my
Uh,
philosophy.
I want you to finish the sentence. Juan Lugo is.
The dreamer. I'm just a dude, dude. I know that's what I said before I cut out, but yeah, I'm just a dreamer, man. I'm just dreaming and living that dream. That's it.
Awesome.
So
Well, can you tell people who aren't watching this, who may be just listening to this audio version, what website they need to follow, what social media they need to go to in order to keep up with Don Doroteo and what you're doing there?
it's Don Doroteo Cigars on all platforms, on all social media and website, Don Doroteo Cigars, or just dondoroteo.com.
Awesome. I want to thank Juan for being with us today, and he's going to hang on because we're going to do a couple other things as we sign off for today. But for those of you watching, thank you for watching. And if you want to see any of this episode or the other, however many they are at this point in the year, you can catch all the episodes at youtube.com/deepcutslive or at deepcutslive.com. And if you're not having a great day, make it a great